You know how that is. I like to pass these out. Last year we had like I say 25 questions, and I think it was Ted Fellows and I came in there, and I reached in there and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to take a while, you know. And I started reading them all off, and I said, Ted, and he showed up early, and I'm handing him, and he's like, stop! He had 8 questions, you know, and I don't know, I had quite a bit too, but anyway. But we divvied them up, and I passed them out in accordance with either with a direct question. Some people actually put who they want the question to go to, and some people don't. That guy did. And oh, there's always one fun one in the group, and that Brother Sam, will you? And that's the only 3 questions I have, okay? But, like I say, when we get done with these 3, and y'all can ask anything audibly, and we can see what we can do to help with it or whatever. So, I'll start since this is, can I say anybody that wants to help give an answer to this out of here? Anybody, not just Renee and Thomas. If you feel like you've been through this enough and you've lived life long enough, you've had to teach teens or whatever, and you want to give me an answer with this, feel free to help me elaborate on this answer, or anybody, okay? Because this is a good question for this group, all right? And what I mean by that is there's an awful lot of young adults here. All right, and that's an awesome thing, by the way, what I call a high-grade problem, okay? The question is, if dating as the world does is a bad thing, how do we find a Christian mate? That's an awesome question, right? Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of answers first since I spoke on the topic this week. I'm going to give you the same answers I gave you in the message on the basis of relating. I have another message on YouTube. I'm not advertising, but it's already on that. There's enough information there to pull from. But what I've learned, and honestly, yeah, and some of it I've learned the hard way, which is not the best way to learn, is that pairing off with a person of the opposite gender and going out in the dark with them and going to, dark movie theaters or even just, in my case, just being in the same car with them. I told my soon-to-be wife when we started dating, we did date, and I told her, I said, dark cars are bad for me. Number one, at least I was honest about it. Dark cars are bad. We pulled up in front of the house, she said, let's get out. Amen. Let's get out, But there was a reason for that, guys and gals. It's because when you became a Christian, when God came in and circumcised your flesh from your spirit and baptized you and placed you into Christ, He did not take away your flesh's ability to sin. Don't kid yourself. He paid for that sin. But He doesn't take your ability away, does He? So, when you find yourself in a compromising position of trying to balance out your emotions because you've been around somebody for an extended amount of time, how many people here understand what the word infatuation means? Come on, get honest with me. Raise your hand like a good Baptist. Raise your hand. All right? Infatuation is when you've got heightened emotions for somebody that more or less are kind of uncontrollable at that state because you've let them go, okay? Not like the song, let it go, let it go. Sorry. I will laugh if you got time, sorry. But when we let our heart, there's a guy named Vadi Baksham. Some of you guys watched that series, not the series, but the message with me on what he thought of dating and the things that he talked about. Large black man, ex-football player, real interesting guy. Now, he doesn't use the right version of the Bible, drives me up a wall, but on this particular topic, I was able to glean some fruit from his message. And one of the things he says is, there's people that say, oh, I've got to follow my heart. Right? There's people that say, well, the heart wants what it wants. Whoa, you know. We know, and I talked about it the other day, Jeremiah 17:9 says, your heart is deceitful, right? What does that mean? If God created your heart to have feelings, why can they be bad for you? Think about that. Evaluate your feelings. Did you know that according to Hebrews 4:12, we can discern the thoughts and intents of your heart? Why is that possible? Because your Father, your heavenly Father, doesn't want you to be dictated by the tyranny of your own fleshly emotions. That's why. Because if you just do what you feel like doing, it feels good to do it kind of concept, you're going to end up making bad mistakes. And to make a long story short, when you're sitting next to someone, and sometimes that's all it is just sitting next to someone, and you get to where you start leaning on them, and the temperature in her body and the temperature in your body start feeling a little warm, hello, God designed those beautiful emotions that you feel to be enjoyed in the covenantal relationship of marriage, folks. Where you don't have to know, you don't have to think in the back of your mind and in your heart that you're doing something bad, because it's not bad, it's beautiful in the confines of the covenantal relationship of marriage. Okay? That's a beautiful thing. But outside the covenantal relationship of marriage, and your conscience tells you that, it's not healthy. It's too soon. Okay? And to make a long story short, that's why, in general, the concept of the world's view of, and yes it is, recreational dating, dating around, trying to find the right person arbitrarily with no concept of what they're actually looking for, okay, is a bad idea. How many people ever heard of the book, and it is just a book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye? Come on, be a Baptist for 2 seconds. All right. If you all turned around and see who all was handing your... Just everybody turn around and everybody raise your hands back up that have heard of it and read it. Or at least perused through it. Look at all those hands. Now I'm going to brag for 2 seconds here. How many grace circles do you go in where people hold their hands up and said they read I Kissed Dating Goodbye? All right? There's 2 reasons for that, folks. Because your parents, your guardians in your life, exposed you to some truth that the world's got some bad ideas out there. Okay? Let me ask you another fun question. How many of y'all is homeschooled? Look at that. Turn around and look at, hold your hand up, turn around and look at all them hands. Can I tell you, in case you ain't figured this out yet, this is kind of an unusual camp. Okay? Amen. And that's good. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't let somebody else tell you because you have standards that you believe comes from the Word of God that you're an oddball. Can I tell you, if it's working right, it can be odd to the world. That's all fine and well and good, right? I get tired of listening to those old songs, guys. It must be love, it must be love. I fall like a sparrow, fly like a dove. This must be the dream I've been dreaming of. Really? I think it's time to wake up. Don't you think we should know what we're doing when we're looking for a mate? Hello? Don't you think we should know what we're doing when we're looking for a mate? Hello? That Body Botcham guy always says, help you. That's kind of funny. Help you? Yeah. So the question is, if dating as the world does is bad, how do we find a Christian mate? Okay? So we talked a little bit about some of the concepts. Greetings! We talked a little bit about some of the concepts of how the world looks at dating. Number one, most people look at the concepts of dating from the external first. What's she look like? Do you have a picture of her? You know, that kind of thing, right? Or he, for that matter. What kind of job he has. Do you have a nice car? Whatever it is, all right? But how many people ask you, wow, what are their values in life? What are their goals in life? I'm not talking about how much money they make. I'm talking about what do they want to do with the rest of their life. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, be not unequally yoked. Who are you going to get in a yoke with? How many people tell you that marriage is a yoke, folks? You put the harness on, you're in that harness with that person. You own that person owns you. You don't believe that? Read 1 Corinthians 7, 1 through 4. Ephesians 5, Genesis 2, Genesis, all those. The goal, if you're going to own something, get the right one the first time. We're not recreational dating, okay? You know in your head and your heart, by the way, you don't have any need to be married. You want to serve God in your life, but you don't feel the need to be married. Do that! Godliness is the same as a single person as it is as a married person. But if you choose to get married and you are looking for a spouse, you better know first what you're doing in life. You better know whether or not you want to serve God in life. What if you think you don't? What if you just think you want to be a plumber and all things fine, things are just a pipe dream, okay? And you decide that you're going to go get married to some gal you just met 3 to 6 months ago, and in that process, somewhere along the way, you go to a Bible camp or something crazy somewhere else, and you find out that, oh my goodness, Romans 12, 1 and 2 actually means something. Romans 6, 7, 8, oh wow, we have a victorious life principle here. Wow, really? I can live the resurrected life? And you start making decisions that actually change what you're doing in your life because you chose to serve God in your life. Can I tell you, if you want to serve God in your life, you best know what your future mate wants to do in theirs. Okay? That's why you don't recreationally date. Okay? Protect yourself, and guys, protect the ladies from themselves too, and from you. It's pretty easy to tell yourself, no, it's pretty easy to tell somebody else no, if you're a strong-minded man. But it's a little more difficult to tell yourself no in the wrong sets of circumstances. Okay? That's why I don't advocate dating, even though I did it at one time in my life. Fortunately, the person that I chose to date was the person that I married. Never dated anybody that I didn't want to marry. I can lay that mostly to a godly upbringing. Okay? But these are kind of rare concepts. Now, they're not here, but I'm just explaining to you that they're kind of rare. Okay? So, I could sit here and talk about that for an hour, but that's a little bit of a waste of time. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yes?
Well, a statement, if that's okay. The question was, how do you find that person that you could marry? And Vicki and I, in our life with our children, we got involved with homeschooling groups and church groups, and in our case it was Christian youth theater. And so the point is that you involve yourself in functions that attract like-minded individuals. In the homeschooling group, at least when we were doing it, it seemed as though more true Christian families were involved in homeschooling. So you had a target-rich environment. When your kids got together, they met kids that most likely were Christians too. So you eliminate a lot of unwanted, candidates, so to speak.
Yes. And narrow down your scope.
Yeah, narrow down
as to where your availability points are to look for the spouse. We don't go to the bar to look for a spouse.
Exactly. And at the same time, you're in an environment which is healthy. You're with a lot of other people, and you're not going to be alone in a car or some of the other things that Barney pointed out. So if you can expose yourself to those type of functions, the homeschooling functions, another guy like the CYT with the Christian Youth Theater was great. We found a lot of families that were like-minded, things like that. So I just wanted to kick that out. Not that it's profound, but I think it might help.
Like-minded people is always a good thing.
Also, if you're letting your light shine, a person that doesn't like that's not likely going to be attracted to you.
Amen. Anybody else?
Anybody can fish at the dam where the carp and the catfish feed. If you want to catch really good fish, you got to find some quiet cove that few people know about.
That's this country.
Fishing at the dam where everybody fishes, you're catching catfish.
Yeah.
They're bottom feeders.
Yep.
You gotta find that quiet code. Listen to God.
Now, on the positive end of that, like you were saying, how do we find a Christian mate? Can I share with you? My daughter found her mate at a camp. I believe Cody and Katie Stead met at either Generation Next or our camp. I'm not sure on that, but they met at a Bible camp or conference, okay? And I know many more who have as well. And, yes.
Well, we met at Christian.
Yeah, see? And of course, Abby and Seth met at church, I mean, through the church family situation. And it's a neat thing to know that the places that you're going to, generally speaking, you have like-minded people there, like you said. And that's a neat thing. So don't be discouraged from, well, honestly, I met my wife at Hardee's, all right? But it was at a Bible study at Hardee's that we found some common ground, okay? So, I mean, she was preaching truth. She was looking for verses that gave her better answers. She was involved in the vineyard. She was not a grace believer when I met her. She didn't believe in one version of the Bible yet. She didn't know all those things yet. But she was searching for truth. And she saw folks in the church that she was in that she thought had unproductive lives. They were very confused. They were in the vineyard, if any of y'all know what that's like. It's kind of a Pentecostal charismatic type situation. Feelings-based, oriented type situation. And she already knew at, let's see, I was 26, she was 31. She already knew that she didn't want to make mistakes. She wanted to get it right. And when you take that seriously, you slow down and do it right. And can I say, with a little bit of chagrin or whatever, there's grace folks that I knew for years that just didn't get it right. And that's why I bother. That's why I, for lack of a better term, muster up the courage to talk about these hard topics. If you don't do it, you don't educate the next generation, then you're going to find them gone. You're going to find them marrying Catholics, unbelievers, or at least Baptists, and they're not going to be here anymore. Okay? We don't want that. Not just because we don't want to lose numbers. We don't want to lose souls, folks. We don't want to, I don't mean that they're not going to be a Christian. We just don't want to lose them like that. By the way, if you get two people together, and one understands the Bible, one understands right division, and the other person maybe is a Catholic or something, when they get married, what are the chances of their kids becoming Christians? See what I'm saying? That's what I mean by lose souls. That's bad. Who you marry is the third most important decision in your life. The first most important decision is whether or not you're going to believe the gospel for yourself. The second most important decision is whether you're going to choose to serve God in your life or not. And that's up to you. Nobody else can dictate that. By the way, that's a vocational with your call and the hope of your calling, right? Ephesians 4. So that third most important decision is who you're going to choose to be in that yoke with. Okay? It's important. Okay, I'm done with that. I was letting Billy get all the verses that he's looking for music here.
Okay. Yeah, music, I think I get an idea of where the question is going, but yeah, the question is music really that big a deal? So, I'm not sure what style of music is being referred to, so might as well just hit from the beginning. Because at the beginning, music was designed and generated to glorify God. It was for people to muse upon their Creator, the one who possessed heaven and earth, that formed and fashioned the heavens and all that. So the goal was to remember what He'd done, or what He had done for mankind and in the heavens and the earth. And it's interesting to remember the nation Israel, I mentioned in my message in Judges chapter 2, they soon forgot His works and what they did. And after they forgot what God did, they started going after the gods of the heathen and doing what the heathen were doing. What God did after God wiped out the Egyptians in the Red Sea, He abolished them and He gave them what was called the Song of Moses. So the children remember the great works of God they could remember and use what was done was put to a cadence, what was like a preservative of what was done, so they wouldn't lose the message, and if someone was altering the words, it wouldn't fit whatever the cadence or the music that went along with it. So as the preserving agent, it was the song of Moses to remind them what God had done. And you read about it for yourself when you have plenty of time, but you can see that they even forgot that. And then they go whoring after idols and stuff. But the thing about music, some of the first ones to start crafting brass and iron to make musical instruments were the descendants of the murderer Cain. They were artificers of brass and of iron. They made musical instruments, and it wasn't to glorify the God who gave them life. It was for their children, it mentions back in Amos chapter 6, their children chant to the noise of the viol. They weren't chanting to glorify God. And just like Lucifer, he was created originally to produce music that would glorify God. He had those pipes and viols and stuff that came out, and he would produce music to glorify God. And that's kind of, pardon the pun, but he took those viols and stuff that he had, and after he fell, he started producing viol music with those things. And you can have nothing wrong with a musical instrument, a harmonica, and certain instruments it's kind of hard to have them sound kind of spiritual. They're just kind of hard because you don't hear them played in certain ways. But when it comes down to music, you see how music started working with the nation Israel. God had good music. They had the singers that were in the temple. And they would glorify God, and God would get glory, he would get honor and laud. You know that term laud, like applaud or applaud? In Psalms and different places it talks about laud him, all ye people. So the adoration, the praise was supposed to be directed toward the God who gave them life and not to go other places. So you speed up and you see how God had good music. Then you had the Chaldeans. You had, like during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, he set up that image in the plains of Dura. And he didn't just say everyone bow down. He had music accompanying his satanic activity. And it allowed people to just naturally kind of go along with the flow of where he was going. And he said, what time you hear the noise of the cornet, the flute, the sackbut, the psaltery, and all kinds of music, bow down and worship. So Satan used those things in the past. He associated music that was altered, that wasn't to glorify God, to add, adorn, and bring and to detour the praise that should have been going to God to the wrong things. And then you can fast forward up to, like in the king's time, you see the worship of Baal and Ashtaroth and the Zidonians. They had music accompanying their activity. You can go even closer to our time. To be even closer, you look at in the 1880s in America. You had the stride-style piano playing, where they're accenting the downbeat, having a syncopation, and it just took off. And where did they start playing it? In the saloons, where they're having prayer meetings and Bible studies. The very opposite. So it was accompanying a flavor of society that wasn't moral, that was chiseling away at the very moral fiber. That was over 100 years ago these things were going on. Then you see the influence around Storyville in New Orleans, right around the early part of the 1900s. You had the Haitians, you had the slave trade and stuff, and they brought in music that they brought up in their worship of voodoo and all these false gods. They started integrating and going in, and they're working and having these different musical times at these bars, and before you know it, the government had to shut down Storyville in like 1917 because they were committing abominable wickedness with animals and with themselves, and the disease was so great and the spread was so horrible, the government came and shut them down because of the deplorable stuff that was associated with that style of music and the morality or the lack thereof that went along with it. You can read it. It was like 1917, kind of like 1904 to 1917.
Nobody hears about that anymore.
So you fast forward 100 years. That was 100 years ago that was going on. And you look at that same beat, the same syncopation, graduate a little bit more. In 1934 and 1936, Roosevelt's niece and nephew went on, it was called the Dodge Congo. They went for a year and a half tour around Africa, and as these natives were playing their music, glorifying their false gods and engaging in decadence and lasciviousness, they took recordings, brought it back, and old Gene Krupa, the Roman Catholic, in 1936, listened to those recordings, simplified them a little bit, and starts pounding them out in the white nightclubs, and the people are like, it really speaks to me, wow, I like this. Where did it come from? The history behind it that people didn't know. They just accepted it because it just kind of made them feel good, and it just moved along, and the words that they sang talked about embracing the gal under the midnight, and it wasn't their wife. embracing and all these things. So what people were tolerating, what they were being preached in their mind in the 1900s, early 1936, 1940s, their children's children like today, no wonder why we're in the condition that we're in. So and then it went down. You see the fathers of rock and roll. You can look those up. It's so decadent. You can't even talk about the things they're doing in mixed company. The fathers of rock and roll, the well-known ones, with their debauchery, their drug use, it just goes on. And I'll spare you all the audible vomit that they were into. So then in 1969, with the help of the Jesuit order, old Ralph Carmichael takes the pounding influence, just like Jimi Hendrix was pounding out. And I remember reading about, he asked one of his girlfriends, he hoped that he could go down to her pastor in Tennessee to get an exorcism or something, because he knew he had unclean spirits on him, and he just was, suicidal and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, Ralph Carmichael took the same beat and rhythms and everything that Hendrix and the rest of the gang were doing, and added Jesus and the word Jesus to it. He started kind of the Jesus movement, or the modern, like the contemporary music, contemporary Christians started with Ralph Carmichael, with the help of the Jesuit order, who hates the God of the Bible, who hates true biblical Christianity, and wants to erode the very moral principles. So the final outcome is chaos everywhere. We need a leader to guide us. Well, we just happen to have a leader, and he's the one that started the problems back in the 60s that we have today, and it just spawned and got worse and worse. It's that the conditioned response. You come up with the problem, you made it, you formed it, you're the only one that can really shut it off. You wanted to get your way back 50 years ago, but they wouldn't accept it till things got bad enough. Now they'll accept your plan. So anyway, that was 1969. And then things went on until we have like today. So you got like the Marilyn Manson kind of people. That's on the lost type thing. They don't claim to be Christian. They don't name the name of Christ. But what's sad, that whole spirit in 1969 with Ralph Carmichael. Am I going too long?
We only got 3 questions, brother.
Oh, well then, really. So anyway, it's interesting to see though. Okay, but the spirit of that, and the Jesuit order back in 1536, their plan was to destroy this text. It was their enemy. The Reformation text brought them so much problem during the Dark Ages. It was like a thorn in their flesh, and they just hated it. So they wanted to abolish it. But it was one of the ways to have true ecumenism, not false Arenicism is what they want. But they had true ecumenism. You can have one voice, one orchestra, and bring in this thing with music that people wouldn't naturally accept without these things as a package deal. So when it comes to good music, God has good music. Music is powerful. I mentioned during my message, Satan knows that he could lose people and they could trust the gospel. They could start doing what's right. So it's almost like to make sure that no one is lost and they all keep chanting the same thing. Gas station TV, Walmart, Target, go in there for a rock concert at Target pretty much if you want to. And they're all just pounding away. Why is everyone so bent toward playing the same old stuff? There was a gal like 50, 60 years old. I was walking down, it was at Walmart, and I said, she was singing the song. I said, oh, sounds like you've played that before. Oh, I'm telling how old I am. There was some song from like the 70s or something. And I said, yeah, they play the same old junk day after day. They do play the same old junk day after day. She said, that's true. It's the same old stuff. And I says, yeah. So it's the same repetition. You start hearing about fornication and you get taught it in the public school. You hear about it long enough. And no, I'm not going to do things like that. You have those prohibitions built up in your mind. No. But after a while, those things start pounding in you. The words they use, the things they sing about, secular stuff. And after a while, even though you're not going to engage in it, it starts breaking down your barriers, your fortress that you once had. And God wants us to fortify our minds with good, pure music. Something that the flesh isn't just going to, without words along with it, and you do the boogie and stuff. We were at a restaurant and they had some jiving thing came on. And the little child across the table from us, he's eating his food, and all of a sudden he's just like, he's just jiving around. His food is falling off his plate, and he's just bebopping in his chair like he was taken over by some spirit. It was phenomenal. Then I started looking around the restaurant. Older people, they're kind of like one hand, like, I was like, it's getting these people, actually the whole body and their whole physical part is starting to move according to the rhythms and those beats. And Satan crafts those things where the chant to the noise of the viol, it's the natural man. It just speaks. It's a language that's easy to be understood. and it doesn't make it good and right. So we all know, or we all should know, regarding music that's glorifying Satan, fornication, that of course is all wrong. We hold those truths to be self-evident. We shouldn't even have to go there. But then when it comes down to like the so-called contemporary Christian music, you could just, if you turned off the voice, and a lot of times they don't even speak clearly. It's like, I can't even get you all gotta start laughing at me. I get a red face. But anyway, when it comes, if you turn off a lot of the words, it's the exact same sound. It could be the same sound, the same driving beat that I heard coming out of the rum shops down in South America. We were at a church down in Florida, and this youth had some big meeting going on in the gym. And I heard, I was like, that's the same exact pounding rhythm, the exact rhythm, different words, that came out of the rum shops out of South America. So I talked to the youth pastor about it. Well, he didn't like what I had to say. But anyway, well, somebody's got to open their mouth and talk.
Right.
So when it comes to the so-called contemporary Christian music, like we have people in the midst, they'll make Christian music that was contemporarily created. So I would have no problem with music that people thought of recently. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you take the syncopated beat that came from the Druids as they're engaging in their human sacrifice and stuff, they came from the beat that came out of the Chad as they're doing their orgies and their decadence and filth, you add the name of Jesus to it, does not make it right. The passing of 100 years, yes, we've seen worse, but just the passing of a century does not right the wrong that was wrong 100 years ago. So I'm definitely an advocate for having pure music. When you hear music, even if you took something old like that one back from the 1300s, "O sacred head now wounded." Here's the body of Christ under persecution, being killed and tortured in dungeons, down in the catacombs and places like that. And out is that Christian bodies being crushed under that oppression. Out comes these songs, and you listen to them today. Oh, the substance and stuff that goes along. People aren't jiving and boogie-woogieing, but from their heart they're giving praise, adoration, and laud to the God who gave them life, and who was able to allow those saints to be able to endure hardness as a good soldier, and be those examples of the believer going through stuff that we couldn't even fathom. So when it comes to music, it's very important. The psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs sing that bring in direct glory and adoration to God. But as soon as you start putting in the backbeat, you start boogie-wooting, your flesh starts kind of bebopping, that kind of stuff, we don't need. If you want to, growing up, I mean, I have flesh too. I'll hear like certain rap music or something, and I'm not going to go listen to rap music, but if I was going to go all the way, a little leaven at the whole lump, in Revelation 3:16, about being hot or cold. If you're going to be dabbling, my thought was, you might as well hear about the guy with the gold tooth shooting the police and, doing his fornication or whatever. But to mix Jesus' name in with that kind of stuff, just kind of mute out their words and have Jesus in there a couple of times, it's just sparing them. So we need to be able to have a difference between the holy and the profane. In Israel's time, they just blend them together, and the people love to have it so. It's just like a little ear tickling. Oh, I just love it. And they came as the people, they heard the word, and they did it not. So music is very important, it's powerful. And I'm an advocate, as Satan is using wrong music to break down the moral fibers of America publicly, we, as members of the body of Christ, should get good music that has good, strong lyrics and substance, and go out publicly and sing that into the society.
Amen.
Where they can hear the grace of God. They see saints with a big smile on their face, lifting up their voice publicly, praising the God who gave them life. And I know from experience, people singing on the corner, smiles on their face, people like, and they come up, "What church do you go to? I kind of like this. Can I join in singing?" Sure. People you never meet, they'll just join in the choir and they'll start singing "How Great Thou Art," and it's just a wonderful time. So anyway, but our public ministry is fun. It's enjoyable. Singing, preaching, taking a musical instrument out there, and taking and building people up. They've been torn down all their life. But taking good message psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, singing in public. And I was talking to someone a little while ago about even singing while you're pumping gas, singing a nice hymn about salvation. I would feel kind of nervous doing so at the gas station, but I know people would be like, "Hey, I heard," I can just imagine people would have nice conversation with people. But not being ashamed of the gospel of Christ, but if you play music that's kind of fence straddling and everything, well, it's very popular, it speaks to the flesh, But just because our flesh gets revved up doesn't make something holy or right and that pleases God. So I'd say be very cautious regarding music that speaks to your body. I heard some quartets grab at some old songs, like, here, little Billy, you need to listen, please. So the guy on the hot lead piano is like, he played just a little boogie woogie, and the people in the audience are like, woo, amen. And I thought, amen to what? You never said any words. The guy just starts boogieing on the piano, like, amen. I thought, if amen means the Lord says so too, you said nothing. But they're all getting revved up, ready to just start boogieing, and I thought, we need to do less boogieing and more Bible study. And to be able to be a nice, peculiar people that this world be like, what is this? I've not even seen these things here too. But music is powerful. Old Paul and Silas, beaten and bound in chains down in the dungeon around midnight. And out comes praise and adoration out of those crushed and bruised bodies. And the prisoner's like, what is this? And they had opportunities to witness and talk and to praise God that they never would have had any other way. But here, up come psalms, hymns, spiritual songs with substance, and those prisoners heard it and they got a good opportunity to witness it. Those same things done today, Paul's, the message, the principles that operate, the message and the method that the Apostle Paul used, that the Holy Spirit gave him back in Corinth and those places, if we use that same method and message today, it will yield the same result. So I just encourage people, read how the Holy Spirit used Paul, a willing vessel, to minister to that present evil world, and start using the same thing, and it's fun. You'll start seeing people get saved, saints edified, and it's an enjoyable ride. So hopefully I didn't take up too much time. Does anyone want any more clarification, or any other thoughts, or anyone want to add something?
I'll add something real quick to that because it speaks to me. Both the first question and the second question, to me, are related. Because what happens is when you understand the world's way of dating, when you understand the design to have desire towards someone else as being not a good thing until you're in the covenantal relationship of marriage, then you start understanding the lasciviousness or the wrongness of a lot of the music today. And I'm not talking about just rock music, country music, the whole bit, guys. Now don't get me wrong, I know as well as anybody else that there's good little bitty tidbits here and there all the way through. In my young years, in the 20s or whatever, I bought CDs, okay, for the one good song on the CD, okay? But the problem was the other 9 songs on the CD were talking about loving, hurting, cheating, flirting, drinking, lying, laughing, crying, okay? So if you're going to sit and listen to all the mudslinging, so to speak, then you're going to suck up a little of it, guys. And I know this. I'm speaking from the heart, okay? You're going to soak up all the guys crooning about this girl that he's mesmerized with, okay? Can I tell you that's not really a good thing to be thinking about if you're at the age where you could possibly be interested in somebody. You don't need to listen to that to think about it, okay? It's not going to help you think clearly at all. I'm not trying to condemn anybody, because I've been there myself, okay? I've read the Louis L'Amours, I've read the romances, Grace Livingston Hill, Christian romances, whatever that is. So, but what I'm sharing with you is, those two things are related, okay? And there's good love songs that talk about commitment, that talk about, I realize that, but I can sit right here and tell you about half a dozen country music singers that lived a life of debauchery that were not involved in the gangster rap and Storyville and all that stuff. But they lived a life of debauchery, okay? People that maybe at one time, and this is more than one case, were quote-unquote good Southern Baptist or good Christian folk, maybe. But they got taken in by that world-greedy system when they signed on the bottom line. And they gave up their standards, folks. They gave up, in a sense, their soul for what they could make. And that's a scary thing. I have relatives that are involved in the music industry. I know where I speak, okay? So be careful, please, about what you're putting in your mind and your heart, because it's not necessarily going to help you if you're listening to the wrong thing. And I don't necessarily mean just the wrong music, I'm talking about the message as well. I had a buddy of mine, good friend of mine, that believes that music is neutral. Well, if you ever drove a car, where can you go in neutral? Downhill fast. Ain't no brakes. Anyway, you get the idea, okay? Music is not neutral. Music by itself sends your natural biorhythms a message. You don't have to believe it, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me, that's fine too. An exercise you might want to do is go to a roller rink, watch all the young males when the music gets rough. You can't tell me, if you're objective at all, that that music does not affect the testosterone in a young male. They get real physical real quick, okay, when the beat gets to going, okay? You can kid yourself all day. Do some tests, do some research on it. It's been proven time and again. Okay, that's enough, I'm sorry. Probably preaching to the choir, but just felt like I needed to say that.
You can find a good, I want to give you another one of my analogies. You can find a good, edible, warm, ready-to-eat, safe burrito in the dumpster behind Taco Bell. How many of you ever ordered a burrito, they put sour cream on it, you didn't want sour cream, what'd they do with it? They wrapped it up, tossed it in the trash. Somebody come by, they take it to the dumpster. It's a good, safe, there's nothing wrong with it. It's got sour cream on it, you didn't want sour cream. It's a good burrito. If you want to go dig through the dumpster, you can find a good burrito, but you gotta dig through the dumpster to find it.
You gotta write this down, that's fine.
We understand that, don't we? We understand that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You should contemplate in your own minds too. You know, you talk about the power of music. Music is a very powerful instrument for learning. How many people here know albums? Entire albums?
Wow.
Okay. How many people here know entire chapters?
Yeah, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That music gets in there, and those words stick, and that tune sticks, and pretty soon 2 to 4 albums are in your head. It's stupid. I hate that, because when I was young, that's all I did is listen to music. So something comes on the radio, oh, it's in there. It's not getting out for 4 hours now. Okay. I wish I'd never listened to music when I was younger, because now I have to concentrate to keep that out. And so to be in Ephesians and let them songs and hymns and spiritual songs speak so I can please the Lord, that takes effort. You know, you got all this garbage in there, and the garbage is, it wants to come out. All the time it wants to come out. It's in there, and it ain't going away. You can't unlearn it. And music is a powerful tool for learning. How many here did the ABC song? Yeah, the ABC song, man. That's how did you learn the alphabet? Almost everybody learned the alphabet when A, B, C, D. Why? Because that tune with the letters, that's powerful. It gives you more to learn, more to grab a hold of, and it makes it fun. I have a nephew. When he was just a little bitty dude running around, some tune come on the radio, and he's just like, he goes, "This music just wants to make me tap my feet." There was nothing. He didn't understand the words coming out of it. He didn't understand anything. Just the music itself. Because it feeds the flesh. And all that stuff that you put in there, that's what's going to come out of you. So do yourselves a favor, especially you young guys and young gals. Do yourself a favor. Turn that garbage off. Turn on the good stuff.
Frank Garlock was a music director at Bob Jones University back when they had vinyl records. He made a recording about this. And in it, he said that at Emory University, an African-American professor did a study on the African music, and he found that the same drum beat that they used to excite to sex and to war was in our modern rock and roll music. That's what they're promoting, with the music, not the word. And Alexander Pope said, "Vice is a monster so hideous a mean, that to be dreaded is but to be seen, but seen too oft, familiar with her face, we first endure, then pity, then embrace." Dr. Bob Jones used to use illustration. He'd be looking for a white shirt to wear with his suit. He'd be checking them out, looking at the shirt collar, see if it was dirty. And his wife would tell him, "If it's doubtful, it's dirty." When in doubt, play safe. That was his word.
Remember, once your flesh develops an appetite, once you learn to like something, you always like it. My thing is, I like watermelon before I got saved. I like watermelon after I got saved.
Better than cold versus peanut butter sundae.
But the point is that once this flesh develops an appetite and learns to like something, you can get saved, but your flesh still likes it. So, obviously, this message, this part of the point is, especially at young people, there's certain things you should never learn to like. Don't develop the appetite. And if you'll protect yourself, don't develop the appetite. And that has to do with your eyes, and your ears, and your hands, and everything else. This flesh, once it learns to like it, it always likes it. And you may learn that that's not good for me, and I shouldn't feed that appetite, but don't fool yourself. I can ride down the road or walk into Walmart or whatever, and I can hear Creedence Clearwater Revival come on, and I like it. I like it. Should I like it? No. Should I go, "Hey man, I'm going to go find one of them old albums"? No. But the fact remains, I still like it. Why? Because my flesh learned to like that. So we have to protect, we have to realize that's the nature of the flesh.
Amen.
And so,
I want to share with y'all in that regard. I mean, there was a lot of years that I listened to country music, and I knew what was going on in the country music world, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, I made the decision one day that if I was going to continue singing for the glory of God, then I needed to make some tough decisions in my life. And that was one of the things that I changed. My presets on my radio don't go to country music stations anymore, okay? Now, I'll say it again, I realize there's some good in there too, okay? Like you said, the burrito's still there in the dumpster, if you want to, but the point is, do you really want to listen to somebody talking about all that just to get the one good song? You know, because you're hearing all the negatives, you're hearing the stuff that's unproductive. You're not going to hear somebody on the country music station tell you how much they value their godly wife. Very often, anyway, okay? They might tell you about their best friend's sister or their best friend's girlfriend or something like that. They're not going to tell you about how much they value their godly wife, okay? Quit kidding yourself. It's not in there. Now, some of us might be able to write a song like that, okay? About the godly relationship you're in. Is the relationship that you're in full of ups and downs? Is it based on human viewpoint, or is it biblically sound? Will you go to God's Word to learn from this evil world to turn and know that unconditional love comes from God above? We can know how our love grows and grows. It grows in strength and truth, but it doesn't come from me or you. It comes from God above. That's how we know how our love grows. So when you believe something like that, and it gets all the way down from your head into your heart, that can cause you to make some crazy songs. Yeah, I wrote that because I believed it. Okay? I'm not bragging, folks. But when that music affects you like that, because of the words that it's giving out affect you like that, because you have some understanding, that is a good basis to start a relationship. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Thank you. Probably hammered that one long enough.
I have one other thought. Some people, over the years, they say, oh, well, this certain country music thing this certain song is great. So you listen to it, and it's so shallow. It talks about family and faith and friends or something. Okay, well, that's kind of nice. It's not singing about bad things. But, or you could sing something that, I don't, maybe I haven't listened to a whole lot of country music, but anyone that does, do you ever hear some guy out there singing about the resurrection power of Christ? Or doctrinal, meaty things? It's usually like a faith, and faith, it's kind of trans, it kind of can go any kind of religion. Anyone that listens to it kind of, it's all fluffy and warm. But singing doctrinal things about the resurrection power, what Christ did for us, I highly doubt that anyone's singing deep, substantial type things. It's little superficial deep things. But
You know, in any church, regardless of denomination or doctrine, they would not have any problem playing that particular Christian country song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like one last thing, then I should probably stop. But I like, somebody used that verse in, I think it's 1 Corinthians 16:15, about how the first fruits of Achaia, how they had addicted themselves to the ministry. And then talk about a wonderful addiction. It's affordable. There's no, what is that, like hangovers or something. It's an addiction, but usually addicts need someone to help giving them that material to stay addicted. I was listening through in 1 Timothy 1:12, where Paul says, I thank God who had enabled me, putting me into the ministry. I was like, whoa, he's an enabler. You know, the AA crews, I mean, got us get away from the enablers. Well, here's an enabler that we need to associate with every day of our life. He can enable us and keep us addicted to the work of the ministry and to helping edify the saints, glorifying God. He's the enabler. And I was like, he never runs out of substance for us either. So that was kind of fun.
Very good. You have a fun question there.
Yeah. The question that was given to me is Genesis 1:1 referring to in the beginning as the beginning of time on earth? And then there's a second part. It says also is the term heaven in verse 1 referring to the first heaven as described in Genesis 1:8. To answer the first part, is Genesis 1:1 referring to in the beginning as the beginning of time on earth? I think my answer would simply be referring to the beginning of creation. In the beginning, God created. And so we have to remember that with God, there is no beginning. He always was, He always will be. It's like I talked about in the message. God didn't need to have any place to be. When it was just God, God didn't need a throne. He didn't need any kind of place. God, I am that I am. But when He began to create, then of course that did mark the beginning of time. And my personal thoughts are, and I always leave room that I could be wrong. Something I'm gonna do a bad thing. Y'all remember the show Happy Days? Some of y'all old enough. And if you remember that episode with Fonzie, and he could not say the word wrong. He couldn't get the word wrong out of his mouth, you know. Well, I'm not like that. So I could be wrong. And I always leave room, except for a few a short list of things that I know I'm not wrong about. Maybe that was those absolutes, you know. There's things I know I'm not wrong about, according to Scripture. But I leave room that I could be wrong. So with that being said, when I look at Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Again, that was the beginning of creation. And He created the heaven. And as I spoke about, I believe that, and this kind of begins to answer the second part of the question, No, I don't believe in the beginning God created the heaven being the first heaven where the birds fly and that kind of thing. No, I believe God created the heaven. You know, you talk about heaven, but then you talk about the heaven. In the beginning, God created the heaven. I believe the heaven is that place that He created that we read about, that there's a temple or a tabernacle, there's a throne, and there are beings that live and dwell within that heaven. That's what I believe. In the beginning, God created the heaven. And then I believe after He created the heaven, then He created the earth. And so for me, that's the way I see it. Just the term heaven in verse 1 referring to the first heaven as described in Genesis 1:8. Again, Genesis 1:8 talks about, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And again, that firmament being, where the birds fly, and then maybe, where the moon and stars are, that kind of thing. That's the firmament. But no, I do not believe that verse 1, in the beginning God created the heaven, has anything to do with what we see with our eye, looking at the birds and the clouds and the sun and the moon and all that stuff. No, I don't believe that's what it's talking about. So for me, that's the short, simple answer. It takes me a long time to answer a question, but for me, that was a simple answer. And there's plenty of places you go. You go to Isaiah 14, where it talks about Satan and who he was and what he was. You go to Isaiah 6. You can go to Exodus when God gave the pattern to Moses for the tabernacle on earth. It was patterned after the tabernacle in heaven. I don't think those things always were there. In the beginning, God created the heaven. And then He put stuff in the heaven. And then He revealed to Moses those things. And then certain of the prophets have seen those things. Isaiah saw the seraphim, at the throne of God. John the Revelator saw creatures in heaven. And so, there you go. Short answer. Did I answer the question? I hope.
It sounds like you answered it as much as your viewpoint carries you to give an answer.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. I
There you go.
understand that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And somebody else may, like I said, I think it might be wrong. Somebody else could come in here and say something different, and it wouldn't bother me a bit.
Okay, now, I'm going to do something a little crazy, because sometimes I do that. Because, while I didn't really want to take 3 hours with question and answer like we did last year, I missed the questions. Okay, I've only had 3 questions, so I'm going to do something kind of dangerous. Do any of you have any questions that you want to ask of us or of the older gentleman here? Do you have any questions that you would, anything at all, practically or doctrinally, that you would like to ask? Okay? Don't be shy. It's a little late to write them down and put them in a box, so it's kind of your fault that I'm asking you. Oh,
You pass the box around.
yeah, we pass the box around, but that takes so long.
Well, you could ask.
Now, do you have any, you want us to do that? That's a good idea. Anybody else wants to pass the box around again? Otherwise, I'm gonna, we'll come to a fruition here in a few minutes and we'll do something different. If we're okay with that, somebody have a question?
Did have a question.
Sure.
My 95-year-old father always talks about going to meet my mother in heaven. What do I tell him about that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Will he know her?
Are we going to be up there frolicking with our mates and knowing people up there, or getting back to be
You mean,
united with?
will we recognize
Reunited,
them
yes.
if they're in heaven? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
No, okay, let me make sure I understand this correctly. Does he have a reason to believe that his spouse would be in heaven?
Yes, he believes
Okay.
that because she was a good woman.
Okay,
He's not saved, he's Catholic.
okay. So really the the question has to go back up to the idea of what he really believes gets you into heaven to begin with. Not so much as dealing with the idea that his spouse will be there. Because if he understood the ingredients, as it were, of the gospel fully, then he would understand how he's going, or anybody is going to be in heaven when they get there, okay? So it's really not a question about who he's going to see when he gets there. It's him understanding whether or not belief in the death, burial, and resurrection.
Okay, that's where I go with him because he
Right.
believes in the Ten Commandments and stands on that.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
when I tell him that he will listen, but then he'll go right back to, well, it's in the Bible, it has to be right, and that's all.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Yeah, that's a good place to start. I mean, if it's in the Bible, okay. If he's interested in what's in the Bible, take him to Romans 3. Take him to Romans 5. Romans 3 and Romans 5 basically teach you that we're all born in sin, and there's none righteous, no, not one. And so the end result of that sin is that we're all guilty. And that means all of us. And the only way that we can get out of that guilt and into a right, peaceful relationship with God is literally from the righteousness of Christ. We have to be placed into Christ in order to be in a right standing with God. Okay? So Romans 3, the latter part of the chapter, up into about verse 20. Let's just go there real quick. Romans 3, verse 19. Verse 19. Now we know that what things soever the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. Who is guilty before God? All the world. And you can get into Romans 5 and find out that even those who had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression were all born in sin. Okay? The beautiful thing about that, it's kind of hard to see beauty out of negativity, right? The beautiful thing about that is God, in His mercy, gave us His only begotten Son as a lamb, the perfect sacrifice, to pay the price for the sin of all of the people that would agree with Him that His Son's sacrifice paid for all the sin. So let's take us to verse 20. Therefore by the deeds of the law, or by works, there shall no flesh be justified in His sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. So the idea of most religions, and Catholic religion is similar, of doing good to get to heaven won't work with God. Because what God accepts is the righteousness of the Son. Okay? Our righteousness, as it says in Isaiah 64:6 and Romans 3:10, our righteousness are as filthy rags to God. Because we cannot compare our goodness, as if that's even on the scale, right, to God's glory. Okay? So let's go down to verse 21. But now, he deals with the guilt. He deals with the fact that we're all under sin. But now, the righteousness of God. That's what we needed, right? The righteousness of God without the law is manifested. It's made known now. Being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God, which is how? By faith of Jesus Christ, unto all and upon all them that believe. Accepted. It's not an issue of works, it's an issue of accepting the payment that Christ did on the cross for our sins. That's the simplicity of the gospel. It's not complicated. The only thing that makes it complicated is somebody that just doesn't want to give up. Okay? And we do that sometimes in a very real way. But eternal life is based upon what Christ did, not anything that we could do or can do. We can't be good enough. All our righteousness are as filthy rags. So we're justified how? Freely by His grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. Without that redemption in Christ Jesus, by the way, there's no freedom. Okay? Because what makes it free is when you accept the gift as being a free gift, the cost that it did pay, you understand that. There was a cost. God gave His only begotten Son, right? God does not forgive mankind arbitrarily. I can't say that. Arbitrarily. Okay? Which means that He doesn't forgive us because He feels sorry for us. Okay? What happened in Genesis 6 when He looked around and saw the sin of the world? He repented that He made man. What did He do? He killed them all. Except for 8 people that got on a boat and did what He told them to do. So when we understand the righteousness of God, when we understand the justice of God, then we start understanding what God thinks about sin. Then we start understanding who we are. Right? So number one, works can't save you. Nothing you can do in your flesh, in your body, can save you or get you into heaven. Number two, the work of the cross was the work that saves mankind because it puts him into a right relationship of peace with God. Romans 5:1. You want to just read the latter part of Romans 4 before you get there. Abraham was fully persuaded in verse 21, and being fully persuaded that what he had promised, what God promised Abraham, he was able also to perform. Now he's not saying Abraham was also able to perform. He's saying that God was able to perform. Abraham did not doubt God. Okay? And in that sense, we learn from that, verse 21. And being fully persuaded that what he had promised, what God promised Abraham, he was able also to perform. No man ever gets saved by performance. God performed it, okay, through Christ. And therefore, it was imputed to him for righteousness. Now, it was not written for his sake alone that it was imputed to him, but for us also. Hello. For us also, to whom it shall be imputed if we believe we're going to live to be 100 and have kids. No. The content is important, right? If we believe on Him that raised up Jesus our Lord from the dead. Who raised Jesus from the dead? God the Father and the Spirit, right? Godhead. If we believe on Him that, here's the content, raised up Jesus our Lord from the dead. Why? Who was delivered for our offenses. He died for our sins. And was raised again for our justification. Therefore, on the basis of this information, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. You got to get in Jesus Christ first. The rest gets taken care of by God. Did you know that God does an operation on you the day you become a Christian? He don't mess around. He changes you radically. Using that sword of the Spirit, He comes in and severs, cuts away the sword, your soul and spirit from the joints and marrow. He takes the sword of the Spirit, which is what? The Word of God, it says in Ephesians 6:17. And when He does that, He makes you a new man. He calls you a child of God. That's a beautiful thing. But if you didn't go to that old rugged cross, if you didn't get to the point where you actually realize, oh my goodness gracious, I am a dirty, rotten sinner. I need to be saved. I need to understand what Christ did on that cross for my sins. Unfortunately, that means that there's another eternity set up for folks that refuse to believe the truth. And one day it says in Revelation, death and hell shall be cast into the lake of fire. And this is the second death. That ain't good news, folks. The good news is the gospel. The bad news is we ain't doing so well before that. Okay? So we need to understand that, first and foremost, works cannot save you. No matter what religion, no matter what church you go to, no matter who your daddy is, works cannot save you. Okay? What you believe is the issue. I can sit here all day and believe in this chair to hold me up. That ain't going to get me to heaven. What you believe matters. Okay? Believe in the death, burial, and resurrection on the cross for your sins. That will change your life. Because God changes your life. He who hath begun a good work in you. That's God, folks. Colossians 2:12. He don't make mistakes. He sent His only Son here to die, knowing what He was doing. That He was going to develop a living organism called the body of Christ. Because He had a plan for the heavenlies. And by the way, folks, what you're doing in your body, learning how to be led by the Spirit, yielding your members as instruments of righteousness, you're practicing for what you're going to be doing up there.
Amen.
Okay? All the glory and things like that it talks about, some of that happens down here. 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whether therefore you eat or drink, or whatsoever you do all the glory of God. Can you glorify God down here? Hello, I hope so. I mean, God gave you a part of Himself. There's no excuse why you can't learn how to glorify God in your body. So, we learned something. Who do we see in heaven? We see the folks in heaven that understood the blessed gospel of the grace of God. The things that satisfies the justice of God was His perfect Son's work on the cross. That's what satisfies the justice of God. That is how God can give you His righteousness. It's not because of anything you do. It's because of what His Son did and the fact that you actually agree with God that that's all it takes. Okay? Then the people that you run into in heaven are all going to be the same people that accepted what God said that Christ did down here on earth. They're your fellow believers in Christ, members of the... And don't get me wrong, I think that some of us will be pretty excited when we meet people up there that maybe we didn't know that became a Christian. I'm not even sure if we're going to recognize them exactly the same way. I don't know what the glorified body looks like. By the way, I'm okay saying there's a lot of things I just don't know. Okay? And that's okay. But He gives us pretty good instructions about what to do from the time that we become a believer and the time that we're raptured out of here or caught up out of here, right? What I do in my body is important. Yes?
Some thoughts that passed through my mind, having done many funerals over the years for different people lost and saved. I think it behooves us as Christians, especially grace believers, to understand the Word of God about the body that's awaiting for our body, Paul calls it. There's a lot of euphemistic ideas about what happens to people after death and all that kind of thing. I've heard people even in Grace Church say, well, the Uncle Frank's up there, Uncle Tom playing pinochle on that one. No, they're not. Well, Aunt Susie's looking down on us today. No, she's not. And you know, nobody goes to hell at a funeral. You just don't say that to people. You know. And but you don't preach that they're there either. The only thing I've got for somebody that doesn't bear a testimony of having known Christ when I have to preach, and I have had to preach funerals for people who were lost. They're in hell when I preach that. And so I don't talk about the fact that, well, we hope so-and-so's in a good place. You don't say that. You preach Romans 5, that one man sinned, death entered the world by one man, and death passed upon all. And so you give a gospel message to people still alive sitting there at that funeral.
Amen.
And that's about all you can do.
Amen.
But then, you know, to go back to kind of the question too, do we recognize one another? I think that's probably what he was wanting to know, whether the lost brother was there or not, and whether he's going there or not, and it went the right direction. We need to share the gospel with people so they get there. But then, do we recognize one another? And I begin to think about all the things through Scripture, and I hearken back to when I mean, it makes it clear in 1 Thessalonians we're spirit, soul, and body. In that order, that's God's perspective. We talk about body, soul, and spirit, but God says spirit, soul, and body. And so, we're this tripartite being while we're here. But when was it Rebecca, when she died, she said, as her soul was departing, she died. So death in Scripture is never a cessation of existence. It's a separation process. Spiritual death is a separation from the life and the love of God when that happened back there with Adam. And so when we die physically, our body separates from that soul and spirit. And it goes somewhere. It struck, my brother and I were talking one day, I said, you know that all the people that ever existed are still alive somewhere? Billions of people. But most of them aren't in heaven. They're languishing in hell, ready to be cast in a lake of fire at the end of time. But back to these euphemistic statements that people make. We have these things in our mind because it gives comfort to people. Well, we hope Uncle Joe is in a good place. You know, he's better off there. And like I said, nobody goes to hell. Nobody thinks that. They think they go into a better place even though they rejected the gospel over and over when they were here. And so it behooves us not only to share the gospel, but to let people know the truth about these things that they say. My grandfather and great-grandfather got a testimony. They're not looking down and watching over me and protecting me. They're in the presence of the glory of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
I assume that probably that's taking up most of their focus right now. Not me, okay? And so we need to educate people that kind of thing gently, you know. Because, I see Facebook all the time. Fly high, 16-year-old boy dies. Fly high, and they think he gained wings. People think these things because of ignorance and because we don't gently share when the funeral's not going on the gospel and what's true. And then you get to thinking a little bit about it. I don't have to share our whole message. Romans 8, 2 Corinthians chapter 5. We know that this earthly house, this tabernacle is all. We have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, for which we groan and earnestly desire to be clothed upon, that we not be found naked. It's a thing that God has preserved for us. And you put those things together with Romans 8, it talks about the redemption of our body, the adoption to wit, the redemption of our body. In Ephesians 1:14 talks about the same thing. There's a redemption of body that's coming for us. It's there for us. It's a resurrection body. It's not a blood-empowered body anymore. It's a spirit-empowered body fit to rule and reign with Christ in the heavens. And so everybody is going to receive a resurrection body, lost and saved. And some people don't know that. The people who are raised, who are died in hell now, they're going to raise again and receive a body that's fit to endure destruction forever. They won't be annihilated and cease to exist either.
That's right.
And that's your loved ones dying and going to hell every day. And so everybody gets a resurrection body. It's prepared for us and everything. When do we get it? Do we recognize each other now? Is the other question I had. Will I recognize my granddad when I die and go to heaven? I don't believe you do. When Saul went to the witch of Endor and he called up Samuel there, they had a conversation going on, but he didn't have a body anymore. But man, there was mind there. You know, when we talk about the spirit, I think it was related to the mind. Talk about the mind and the soul, and it's sometimes talk about the heart. When it talks about the heart, it's a reference to your soul too. There's spirit, there's soul and body. Mind, heart, and that physical body. That spirit is designed to communicate with God in one of his children. Okay? In the lost person, that's cut off and dead. That's why I always say when we make an appeal to the gospel, it's not to appear as a person's spirit, because that spirit is dead. You're actually making a persuasive appeal to a person's soul, with the heart or the soul man will be with righteousness. And so all those things you've got to think about when you think, do we recognize one another? I think we will. Is there marriage in heaven where me and my wife, departed wife, will get together and have a marriage again? No. That's not scriptural. You know? And so it's not like, and that's what they want to know. They loved these people they had relationship with in the earth. But in eternity, even if you've got saved people who are married for 50 years or whatever, they don't get back together in a resurrection body and come down to life again. You know, we're there serving God and worshiping God and ruling and reigning with Him. That's what the Scripture makes plain to me. But when we die today, without having not received those bodies yet, until that time when Christ returns, it's made plain in Ephesians and Philippians and places. That spirit and soul, I believe, is still recognized. When the rich man and Lazarus, has that experience. They knew one another. They could see each other, but they didn't have a body, you know. But he could see him across that gulf and said, go back and tell somebody to warn my brothers not to come to this place. You know? And so, to me, there's a recognition in that afterlife that we talk about out there in that world that is spirit and not flesh anymore. And so, do people recognize one another in the next place? I believe they do. I think they probably recognize one another in hell. You know? But that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Seemed like Peter knew Moses and Elijah on the Mount of Transfiguration.
Yeah,
Or they told him where they were or something.
yeah.
Moses and Elijah knew each other,
Yep,
you know.
yep.
Yeah.
Anything else? Well, there's a clipboard somewhere around here with memorization chapters. There it is. The Forester Girl